that's really key, because I find that it's within our own race that you'll find the worst ugliness. Like I've experienced different things at the hands of white folk that we won't even discuss or get into right at this point. But the worst kinds of discrimination that I've faced haven't been, well, the kinds that have affected me the most, that have affected who I feel like and what I felt like as a person, where I felt my value was as a person, those came from my own race. Having people of my own race look at me and say, you're not black enough. But then going to school and not being able to fit in with the white kids. Like high school was hard. It was my first year of high school was absolutely one of the hardest years of my life. I went from living in Rexdale, which is a predominantly black area. It's a poor area. Anybody who's from Toronto knows the area well. Rexdale is it's what it is, okay? It's what it is. And I grew up there, and my mom decided that when we got to high school, when I was going to high school and middle school, she wanted to get me out of that area. So we moved away, and I ended up being able to go to one of the biggest schools, one of the biggest high schools in Toronto. And so when I first got to that school, it was wild because it was the first time I had gotten a really good cross section of students. Like we had students of all nationalities and stuff there. But it was also the first time that I really didn't feel like I was black. Like I had gotten it a lot as a kid, but race didn't play such a big issue until like middle school and high school. It didn't really factor in. That was when people started sort of separating into their cliques. And when I got to high school, there were a lot of black people in my high school. But I wasn't big into sports. I wasn't big into, like, I didn't play basketball. I wasn't into rap music at the time. Like, I wasn't into any of the stereotypical black things. So I didn't fit in with any of the black kids, did not fit in. And they didn't let me in the group, so to speak. But I was black, so I didn't fit in with the white kids. So I was just, my first year of high school was hard, simply because of that. It wasn't until I kind of had that mental epiphany that everybody goes through at some point in their life where you decide, fuck it, I'm going to be who I am and everybody else can piss off. Once I hit that zone and I hit that stride, it was a lot easier for me because I didn't care. I was me. I was unapologetically me. I listened to my soca music. I listened to rap. I listened to Alanis Morissette. I didn't care what I wanted to listen to or what I wanted to do. I was into both magic cards and basketball. I was unapologetically me. I just went with what I liked and did what I liked, and that was the be all and the end all. And I went with it to see where it would take me. Do you know what I mean? But it's always been a thing in my life. Whenever I faced any type of discrimination when it has to deal with my blackness, most of that has come from my own race. And I think that that's something that needs to be unpacked within the Native population. There's a lot of people who have varying opinions. And like you said, people look at you and say you have a certain amount of nativeness to you, or maybe you don't look native enough, or maybe you don't have enough native blood in you to be considered native. And it's the same thing within the black community. They look at us and they're like, oh, I get the whole you're an Uncle Tom or you're a Carlton because, you know, you fit in with the white folk and you talk with the white folk real good. And it's, guys, that's not what it's about. Being black is being black. I would still, if me and the most thuggish guy living in Detroit or living in Chicago were both stopped by the same cop, we both have the same damn chance of getting home that night. Doesn't matter. My skin is just as black as yours. I'm going to be treated just exactly the same, regardless of how I speak or how I handle the situation. We both are in exactly the same boat. So I think that that's one of my main focuses when everybody starts talking about race and stuff. I'm trying to unpack my own racial trauma as it deals with my own race. I'm trying not to put a lot of the onus on what white people have done or white people are doing, or like a lot of people are still like, you know, slavery did this or this did that. And I'm like, yeah, those things definitely played a part in how we got to the situation that we're at today. 100%, no argument there. But how we deal with it and how we move forward as a people is also just as important. We can't ask people, we can't ask the gatekeepers, the people who have the power, we can't ask them to help us with something when they look at us as people who aren't helping themselves, right? With people who aren't serving their own interests. So, and that's not a conversation a lot of people within my race are ready to have. They're just not ready to have that conversation. They're too wrapped in their own pain. They're too wrapped in their own trauma to really connect with what's holding us back, with what's really at stake and what's really holding us back in this situation. And so I've had a hard time when it comes to talking with my own race about this. And it's I've had a harder time talking to my own race than I have talking to white people, to be 100% honest. Lately, I've had more confrontation talking to people of color about this issue of racism and police brutality and socioeconomic disparity and education disparity. I have a hard time talking with my own race because they're just not ready to accept that there are certain things that we as a race do to ourselves that hold us back, and we need to address those issues too. They need to be, it needs to be a cohesive effort on all sides of the issue. We can't ask one person to help us with something if we're not helping ourselves. That's just my strong belief.
For sure. I mean, I've I've had those little like aggressions and stuff like that as well. Like, doing grassroots work, you always have the people who make the digs about having a university education, like constantly. They make the digs at you, like how sometimes like you've betrayed your race because you got an education. Meanwhile, it's just because I really like history, and the only way to compete with white historians is to have a degree. Um, or to be taken seriously or with any authority at all is to have a degree, which
Yep.
literally means nothing. Because I've heard the stupidest things come out of the mouths of people with degrees. Um, but I've also too been in. I've taken like Indigenous studies at Algoma, and I've had like a woman teacher, like a TA. I'm not going to name who it is, because the is way too small, and she was going to go pursue her master's. She's Métis. I mean, she looks just like me, maybe even a little whiter. And basically, I was having a conversation with another student, like just about my community or whatever. And she stops and she goes, "Oh, maybe Skylay's an Anishinaabe after all." And it's just like, I'm like classified by the government as an Indian, which I don't even like that word, but like, it's just like, why do you feel the need to say that? Like, does it legitimize you in some way? Like, I don't understand what putting me down has to do with anything here. And it's just like, in Bawatang, it's like it's a gathering place. It's like people from all over, everywhere used to go there to connect and share and learn. And it's just like, what is this?